A Streetcar Named Desire is a play written by Tennessee Williams. He introduced three main characters, Blanche, Stanley, and Stella. Blanche, an old sister of Stella and English teacher in Laurel, loses her family mansion, Belle du Bois. In order to change her depressed and misfortune atmosphere, she came to New Orleans in the Kolowski apartment with her sister and brother-in-law Stanley. The family man, Stanley, always had issues with Blanche because he didn't appreciate her. He is shown as a dominant and masculine character. In this scene, it's Blanche's birthday and all of them are having a dinner with her, but Mitch, her lover and Stanley's friend, isn't present during the dinner. Worried and confused, she leaves a message, and on the other hand, Stanley gives her a gift. A one-way ticket back to Laurel. Blanche is hurt and Stella tries to calm Blanche, but she defends her sister over her husband and the way he makes her suffer. So we may wonder, how does the playwright shows Blanche's naive and suffering atmosphere, and how does the playwright express the evilness of Stanley over Blanche? So first, we're going to see Stanley as a masculine and provoking character in the scene. And two, we're going to see how Blanche is pushed over her limit and abused of her kindness. So Stanley is presented as a masculine and a provoking character in this scene. Stanley is a sarcastic and a mocking figure. He is rude and incomprehensible. I quote page 81. "Don't forget all that I took of her. Delicate piece she is. I done nothing to no one. Let go of my shirt. You've torn it." It clearly explains Stanley's mocking figure. The adjective delicate that he uses to describe Blanche can be considered as an insult or to make fun of her. She is dishonored and violently pushed to her extreme. The playwright might illustrate the way women are treated in the 18th century. The negation nothing expresses a contradiction because Stanley has broken Blanche, but he reacts as if it was normal. The negation emphasizes on sarcasm and his rude behavior. He insults Blanche openly while he is on the phone. I quote, "Quiet in there, we've got a noisy woman on the place." It might illustrate a noisy marketplace, and the adjective noisy explains the way he sees Blanche. Furthermore, the determiner, A, undoubtedly illustrates Blanche because he is specifying the woman. He indirectly insults her and makes fun of her. It shows his evilness and his misbehavior toward Blanche. Furthermore, Stanley doesn't appreciate what Stella tells. He becomes furious and angry at her. I quote, "Don't ever talk that way to me. Big, Pollock, disgusting, vulgar, greasy." The accumulation shows some meliorative thoughts. He is threatened in a way he is. In fact, it illustrates indirectly his character and his evilness. He orders Stella to give him respect, but it doesn't amuse or enjoy him. He reveals his masculine figure. He insults indirectly his wife and her sister-in-law. I quote, What do you think you are? A pair of queens? Remember what Wei Long said, every man is a king." He asks a rhetorical question that can't have any answer. He is extremely displeased and annoyed. He wants to show up and put him before anyone. He reveals his masculinity. He refers to a sentence from a book, "Every man is a king." It reveals his sexism towards women and how he sees women. He has a strong and opponent figure that affirms his presence. He doesn't want to obey anyone, but to be obeyed, and once again puts his masculinity figure in front of everyone else. As such, he accuses Blanche of having ruined their couple. I quote, "I pulled you down of them columns and how you loved it, having them colored lights going. And wasn't we happy together? Wasn't it all okay till she showed here?" The repetition of wasn't expresses a negation and shows the way Stanley tries to convince her wife Stella. He tries to make her realize the situation in order to get rid of Blanche. He illustrates his vicious thoughts towards Blanche. The way he carries his wife isn't the same as he carries Blanche. I quote, he is with her, supporting her, with his arm murmuring indistinguishably as they go outside. Stella is having Stanley's attention more than Blanche. He carries her within his arm. He illustrates a husband carrying his wife with precaution and without any vulgar move. He takes precautions. It might be because she carries his baby. Blanche is seeking attention, but doesn't get any from anyone. He doesn't behave like a brother at all, but like an enemy that seeks revenge. Overall, Stanley is shown as a masculine and a possessive character into the play. He mocks and insults Blanche as she is different from other women. He doesn't appreciate her and wants her to go out. Blanche is abused from her kindness and tries to calm herself in vain. She is supported by her sister who confront her husband for her.
Let's move on to our second part. Blanche is pushed over a limit and abused of her kindness. Blanche has a naive and innocent character. She's not very appreciated by Stanley and seen miserably by Stella, her sister. This scene shows her degradation state of Blanche and the way she is mentally and emotionally abused. She is sullen and desperate by her own state. Her sister tries to convince and supports her. She confronts her husband and supports her emotionally. Blanche is disturbed by two men, Stanley and Mitch, during the scene. Stanley, Stella, and Blanche are having dinner, and Mitch doesn't come to the dinner. He doesn't appear during the dinner. The scene opens with a description, such I quote, a dismal birthday supper. The playwright describes an oppressive atmosphere, and the adjective dismal subjects a lugubrious moment in the scene. Blanche is so naive that she asks Stanley to tell a joke. I quote, Stanley, tell us a joke and a funny story to make us all laugh. Stanley didn't appreciate the presence of Blanche. He was irritated and invaded by her presence. He wants to avoid her and makes her life worse. His response to her needs is quite mocking and irrelevant because he doesn't seem to be happy and in the state of telling a story or a joke. The conversation between Blanche and Stanley shows their weakened relationship and the way Stanley heads through. It's well illustrated with the exclamation "Achoo, ach" when while Blanche is telling a joke. The exclamation "Achoo, ach" illustrates Stanley's interest and mournful reaction. It also shows Stanley's brutality and cruel character toward Blanche. Blanche was expecting her boyfriend with whom she spent, they both spent last night, and Stanley's good friend. Even though Minch isn't present in the scene, but his presence is felt over the description given by the playwright. I quote, there is a fourth place at the table which is left vacant. The adjective vacant symbolizes the absence of Mish in during Blanche's birthday, during Blanche's dinner, and in fact also in Blanche's life. He won't come no more to Blanche, but Blanche doesn't seem to know it. She tries to call me, she tried to have an explanation. She seems confused, while during the during the message uh she's she's telling what in the phone. I quote, hello, Mr. Mitchell, please. I would like to leave a number if I may. Mongolia 9047. And say it's important to call. Yes, very important. Thank you. She remains by the phone with a lost, frightened look. Even though Mitch isn't present in the scene, his absence marked the end of his presence in the novel. It also marks the end of Blanche's suffocation. She seems confused and tormented by the situation. The hesitation during the message for Mitch outlines Blanche's confusion state, mentally and emotionally. Blanche degradation state over the scene is shown during the whole scene. At first, Blanche tries to make everyone laugh. She asks Stanley's help. I quote, Blanche suddenly, Stanley, tell us a joke. Tell us a funny story to make us all laugh. I don't know what is the matter. We are all so solemn. Is it because I have been stood up by my beau? She asks a funny story in order to change the atmosphere. The adjective funny suggests a change that plants want to do. She doesn't only want to change the atmosphere but also her mood and her emotions. She hides her own story and tries to be happy with her sister and brother in law. In the middle of the scene, she becomes confused and doesn't understand Minch's absence. I quote, Blanche, what happened while I was bathing? What did he tell you, Stella? She asks so many questions in one sentence. In her sister, the repetition of what indicates her curiosity and her confusion over Minch's absence. We can even say that it's the beginning of her mental fall. She's upset and doesn't understand what is happening around her. It is the scene that tormented her. After a small birthday celebration, she receives a gift from Stanley. She's much surprised at first, but then realizes his cruelty and sarcastic character. She receives a one-way return ticket to Laurel. I quote, Blanche quietly, what is it? Is it for me? He's holding a little envelope towards her. Yes, I hope you like it. Why? Why is it a ticket back to Laurel on the Greyhound Tuesday? The Vasuviana music still in softly and continues playing. Stella rises abruptly and turns her back. Blanche tries to smile. Then she tries to laugh. Then she gives both up and springs from the table and runs into the next room. She clutches her throat and runs into the bathroom. Coughing, gagging sounds are heard. Well, you didn't need to do that. Don't forget all that I took off her. At first, she is surprised and excited to receive a gift from Stanley, but at the end, she controls herself to not cry. The description shows a decline of Blanche's character. She is emotionally destroyed and devastated by the evilness of Stanley. The verb tries clearly shows the effort she makes to smile, but her desperate mood takes over. She tries to console herself by running into other rooms, but she fails to control her emotions. The repetition of runs expresses her will and her innocence. The lexical field of emotion is shown into the scene. I quote, smile, laugh, clutches, coughing and giggling. It illustrates a degradation of her emotions and her mental destruction. She is slowly devastated and mentally discomposed. But her sisters comfort her and support her during the whole scene. Stella tries to calm this tense atmosphere. She's stuck between two characters that are important in her life. In the beginning of the scene, she tries to avoid an anxious situation. I quote, Yes, you tell one, Blanche. You used to know lots of good stories. When Blanche, is asking Stanley to tell a joke, the verbal group used to know shows her how Stella tries to turn the situation. She gives an excuse to avoid her husband telling anything or mocking. She's as against what her husband does and makes an effort to be happy with Blanche because she already knows what happened. She's not at all happy and she's worried for her sister Blanche. I quote, She throws her head and laughs. Stella also makes an effectual effort to seem amused. Stanley pays no attention to the story but reaches way over the tables to spare his fork in the remaining chop which he hits with his fingers. The adjective ineffectual effort shows that she forces herself to laugh and to not disappoint Blanche, her sister. It illustrates a maternity affection toward Blanche. She can be compared to a mother who tries to avoid any fight or wrestled situation. Stella supports her sister and she argues with her husband. I quote, I hope you're pleased with your doings. The sentence expresses irony and shows the relationship between Stella and Stanley. It also degrades their relationship because it shows the sarcasm of Stanley. She is against what her husband had done and not in favor of making her cry. She cries quietly. The adverb quietly illustrates the way that she doesn't want to share her sorrow, her empathy, and broken state in front of her husband. At the end of the scene 8, Stella isn't happy with what her husband has made. She argues with Stanley for his cruelty in front of Blanche, and Stanley gives a return ticket as a gift to Blanche, which is cruel and disrespectful. Stella asks for an explanation for what Stanley has done. I quote, "She, you needn't have been so cruel to someone alone. She was. You didn't know Blanche as a girl. Nobody was tender and trusting as she was. But people like you abused her and forced her to change." The verb be is conjugated in different tenses, present and past tense, which illustrates Blanche's change and the reason for how she behaves. Furthermore, the repetition of nobody in Stella's dialogue shows her strong support to Blanche in the way she opposes her own husband. She is in the place of a protector or like a mother. The description I quote, she catches hold of she catches hold of his shirt. It draws a violent move from Stella, and it's quite impressive because it is the first time in the play that she opposes her husband. She always had been silent in the whole play and had done nothing before. But here, she forces her husband to answer. She's angrily waiting for the reason of his misbehavior to his sister. To conclude, scene 8 is a key scene because it shows Blanche's fall and Stanley's cruelty. Stanley doesn't appreciate Blanche. He tries to avoid her and to get right everything from her. He even destroyed her emotionally and abused her kindly. He is always seen as a family man on our films, often as American character or American citizen. On the other hand, Blanche is totally confused and destroyed emotionally. It is the beginning of her melancholy and her illness because she is tormented by this scene. She is insulted and humiliated by Stanley, but her sister Stella helps her and comforts her, but it is the end. So, even though it is the first time Stella contradicts or comforts her husband, nothing had happened before, so I think it's too late to confess her husband. It is also the beginning of Stella's revelation on her husband. The music leads every emotions of each character. It describes each emotion and feeling into the scene. It has the same role as the character in the play. Thank you.